Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. So the trailer for next season is out. The season called Tigers, inspired by the Japanese culture, and it looks promising. There are no broken tanks that will be released next season. So overall, when I saw the trailer, I was happy with it. Obviously, I wish there were some more things that were included, but we'll go over the things that are included and do the tank reviews first. So there are three existing tanks that will be available either with the free pass or with 2K pass. Essentially, I consider 2K pass free as well. And the tanks are TS-5 for level 75, Heavy Tank 6 for level 25, and Oni Orochi for level 100. So if you're a very, very good player, you would not like the tanks that are being released this season, mainly because they're slower tanks compared to our last season. Last season we had Panzer 8 Muds, the best tier 8 medium, especially when you're a good player because of its DPM mobility. Everything about that tank was very good. I really enjoyed that tank while playing. At level 6 we had a tier 6 light tank, Type 64, also beautiful light tank, the best tier 6 light, or one of the best. And then at level 100 we had Type 59 too. That was an okay tank, but had alpha. But when we compare it to this season, we have slower tanks. Like every tank is slow, but they're armored tanks. So if you are average player, new player, you would enjoy these tanks more because they're armored. They don't have the mobility, so they're not that mobile. So you don't have to worry about going somewhere because more or less you won't be able to get anywhere quickly. So, but the tanks are good for newer and semi-experienced players, I would say, in this season, and that's the balance we need to maintain because we have to cater both players, new and experienced. So let's start with the TS-5. This tank plays very similarly to Tech 3 T-28. This looks like a baby E3. It looks more like an E3 compared to a T-28, but they play very identical. This tank the benefit of this tank, first of all, I'll tell you the thing I like the most. I did not realize, but I had the skin of this tank already. It was an earn-op back in the day. So if you are like me, you didn't buy the tank, but you usually do most of the ops, you should have the skin available already. And I do like the plasticky look of these skins like Cobra T54 or T44 tank. So I was very happy that I don't have to spend any camo vouchers on the camo. And I already had the skin. Not a fan of the green color, but overall I like the skin. So let's get started with the tank. Plays very similar to T-28. It is a fixed turreted TD. And considering it's a US tank destroyer, it doesn't really have a great yaw. It goes plus minus 10 left and right. It's not like the British TDs where the gun arc is huge. So you have to be careful. You do have armor, but the armor on fixed turreted TD is kind of strange, mainly because you can't really turn. So even though you have armor, you can't really play aggressive because you will get pen, especially with the premium of the same tier. And most of the time, you will not be top tier, and tier 9s and tier 10s will go through you pretty easily. So don't get fooled by the armor. In the beginning, you have to play more as a support tank, and that's what I did in this map. I kind of set up on my sniping spot. I had a clear line of sight, and lucky for me, the enemy just kept driving straight and I was able to punish them and do some damage. So when comparing to T-28, this tank has similar side armor. However, it has heat as premium. It is heat, but it does have better shell velocity than its AP. T-28 gets a huge shell drop. It has premium APCR though, but it gets a shell drop or penetration drop over distance. But since with this tank it's heat, it does not. The DPM is okay as well. Good hit points. That's the max hit points you can get for a tank destroyer, 1500. Speed is slow, 26. Not the best. Faster than T-28, but still slow. And because of the speed, if you are basically following your team, you will not end up having damage because you'll be behind. So either your team will end up dying by the time you get there, or they'll kill the enemies and just keep running. So the best way to play these type of tanks is you hold a weak flank so you can punish as the enemy is coming, because the tank does have camo. Or like me, like you can pick a sniping spot where you can just farm whenever the enemy crosses. And then late game, obviously, when needed, you can utilize your hit points as well. And as you saw, I was pretty on a higher ground, but enemy was still able to pen me. I did get spotted. There was a tree in between me, but when they got close, they were able to spot me, and they do end up penning me. They can pen your hats, they can pen your lower plate. Most of the RBRT shots should bounce, but usually 1 out of 3 random shot will end up penning you, especially when they're premium. And that's the thing. And even when you are pushing, especially like a mobile tank, don't push by yourself. You have to push with someone because they'll get around you and basically kill you. You can, however, be more aggressive if it's a slower tank, as they're not that easy for them to get around your tank, and with a good DPM you can easily farm them or kill them. But I have to be careful against mobile tanks, like any fixed turreted TD. So I can't play too many games with this tank just because it's slow, but as I said, if you're new, semi-experienced, you will enjoy that tank because it does have decent DPM, does have camo, and does have armor. But that's the thing, like the armor with the fixed turreted TDs kind of work. If you're being aggressive in the beginning, you'll end up, it'll cost you. But if when you are in a better position, right, if it's one-on-one, it'll work more often than not. It won't work if it's 2v1. So now let's move on to our next tank, Orochi, level 100 reward. It has both guns. It's basically a tier 7 Oni with buffed HP. It does have the derp gun as well as the regular gun. This game I'm using the regular gun. I didn't have optics in this game, but I switched to optics because I do feel I do need optics. Initially I went with loader, stabilizer, and vents, but then I switched vents for optics because I was struggling to spot enemies. This tank, similar to Oho, similar DPM, similar gun, does have 10 degrees gun depression, but doesn't feel like 10 up front because of the miniguns. And I don't know how much exactly it is. I wasn't able to figure it out, but it's not 10. You might get 10 somewhere, obviously on the sides, but I'm not sure the exact gun depression you have in the middle. So you have to be careful, not assume it's 10 because you will easily get punished by enemies. So this tank also has multi-weapon system. Now, the best way for the most efficient multi-weapon system is in a tank when your secondary gun is on your turret, something like mouse, and also like if it has good shells like APCR. So mouse's secondary gun is the best, at least for me. It fires premium APCR. It's on the turret, so both your reticles are kind of moved the same way. Unlike this tank, where your secondary guns are on your hull, and they have their own arc, and it could be very confusing. The secondary guns do have good penetration though, because it does fire premium APCR. However, one is on the right, one is on the left. It is like a two-way sword. Because for me, I can only work with one secondary weapon. I can't work with two. It is just too much. And especially if you have small gun, you can't even use your secondary gun because by the time you end up switching, you will basically be missing out on the DPM of your first gun. And not to mention, if you're picking corners, sometimes only one of your gun will have the shot on the enemy. And so in this tank, if you're using small gun, it's going to be very difficult to use the miniguns. They can be used, if you get into one of those situations, if you're facing artillery or lightly armored tanks. But when you're engaging heavy tanks, I don't even think you can use the secondary gun. Also, they're a lot lower, so not the easiest to use as well. But if you are playing this tank, I would recommend just play the derp gun, because even the main gun, it does not have enough pen to reliably pen tier 9s, let alone tier 10s. And because you're super heavy, you're flat, you're a Japanese big tank. Whenever you're peeking, more likely than not, you will take a shot and get penned as well, because it's a super heavy for tier 8, but it's basically not really that armored for tier 9s or 10s. So because you have to aim for weak spot, and for this gun, the derp gun doesn't have that issue. And if you want similar to Type 5 experience, you should just go for play with the derp gun. That's the way to play. No point even trying this gun. Like I tried it mainly because I didn't even realize it's a second gun, even though I had played it back in the day. But you're just more effective with your derp gun, mainly because you don't really have to aim. You'll consistently do 300 damage, which is the same as the alpha of this tank, but without aiming, and you can easily pen, not pen, but splash higher tier tanks as well. So you basically have to expose yourself less. And sometimes you get those lightly armored tanks where you can full pen them for 1000 damage. 910 is the alpha, but you know, sometimes you high roll. So you do end up doing more damage with Hesh, even though on paper it doesn't feel like that. But that's always the case. It's the same with Type 5, it's the same with the O-Ni, same with this tank as well. And yeah, you can even pen the sides of most of the tanks if you aim your shots carefully. And another thing to keep in mind with this multi-weapon tanks is you have to eliminate as many shells as you can. So like we have 3 types of shells for main gun, 3 for secondary, and 3 for the second secondary. The third gun, right? So if you have all shells in every, if you have all type of shells, that's 9 type of shells. You will be confused. At least I get confused. So what I do is, in this case, I only have premium APCR in my secondary guns. If you don't want premium, you can just keep the standard, because you have to realize you will not be able to switch shells. That's not happening. And then for your main gun, right? In this one, I only have premium APCR, but in the other gun I had heat and AT. So basically, I have 3 different types of shells, or 1 shell per gun when I'm using the smaller gun, and then when I'm using the bigger gun, I do have 2 shells, 1 heat and 1 AT. Heat just for those targets, especially if they're lower tiers like tier 7 and 6, if I can pen them reliably instead of going for AT. But if you with the 3 guns, with the 2 guns, you might still be able to manage different type of shells, but with 3 guns, it is not an easy experience. So, and that's what I said, right? This multi-weapon system might look great. Oh, it has 2 secondary guns, but not the easiest to use. I prefer just 1 secondary gun. So you have to keep in mind what shells do you want to use. You know, if you don't want to afford, you can't afford premium in secondary weapons, load the standard shells, right? I would recommend don't have multiple type of shells for each of your guns. And especially if you have the small gun, which again, I don't recommend using. The tank does have logs on the side. That's just the skin. It does feel it has some gun depression in the middle. This is more than when it's looking over the miniguns. But as I said, I'm not sure how much that is. So I did block decent amount of damage, mainly because I was top tier. The armor is like Oho. You do end up blocking, especially when they're firing standard shells. So in this map, now I switched to derp gun, the gun you should be using if you are playing this tank. And as I said, it doesn't matter much if you are in tier 8, if you're facing tier 8s, but it's going to have a huge impact when you're facing 9s and 10s. Roenberg is going to the middle in F2. I realized they have armored tanks, so I switched to AT. I didn't want it to do, because the AP or heat, they don't have the best pen either, right? It's for your same tier. And there's nothing more frustrating than you loading a heat or AP and then bouncing the shot and then just cursing yourself that you should have just gone with AT, because that's a guaranteed damage, no matter the armor. Also, you can no one can really side scrape when you are using AT. Our team has all of them are in the town, not really in the field, so I took the opportunity to go forward. And here you'll see how AT comes into play. I peeked a little bit bad. They had a Scourge and as well as Jack Tiger there. I didn't realize Scourge was there, and both of them ended up penning me, and I'm at 900 damage. Already lost almost 700 of my HP. And then I decided to play it like a heavy tank and side scrape, because you do have enough armor where you can side scrape. If they can aim, they can pen your shoulders. But most of the players, they kind of rush your shots. I rushed my shot here as well and did not do any damage to that Jig or Jack Tiger 88. Since our team was very heavy on the town, I could easily sidescape, not worried about them poking on the one line. So basically I just end up sidescaping and doing a little bit of damage, 300, 200 at a time, and just keeping my gun in the game. And now coming to how would I rate this tank? The tank is a super heavy. How much can you really enjoy a super heavy? I can play like 5 games a day in a super heavy before I get bored, right? And that's what I said in the beginning. If you're a good player, if you're an experienced player, you know, someone who understands mobility, the importance of mobility, and rely less on armor, you might not enjoy these tanks as much. This is more for someone who like to play armored tanks. You know, they want to get in the front line. That's what this tank is for, as you can bounce shots at least with same tier. But in the current meta, with the amount of TDs, just remember, if you're not top tier, do not try to be the frontline tank, because it does not have armor for that. And if I have to rate this tank for myself, I would say at best 6 out of 10, just because of the mobility and how the current meta is. But that does not mean that things won't change in the future. It is a free tank. Everyone should get it. There's no reason to. I mean, not to mention the other tanks that you get with the 2000 gold season pass. You should also get those ones, because you end up making more gold than you spend, right? There seems to be a lot of confusion. A lot of people I see time to time, they say, should I get the basic season pass, right? I mean, there's no question, because you may end up making way or more than you spend 2k gold, you get more than 2k gold back. So even that season pass is essentially free if you can finish the season. And because the ops kind of stack, even if you don't have much time early on, you can just do the season the last couple of weeks and you will be able to finish. Now, let's talk about the other things that is coming on with this season. The Live Oaks maps is returning. Very beautiful map. Loved playing that map pre 6.0. I hope the terrains are not much changed, because with some of the maps, they change the terrain where the gun depression, it just needs more gun depression. I hope that's not the case with Live Oaks. The tank's good for light tanks. There's a medium tank that can play. There's a position for that. Position for snipers. Heavy tanks can go to the city and brawl. It's a really, really balanced map. At least it was pre 6.0. And more or less it should be the same, unless team decided to play differently, which could be the case, especially because of the Cold War influence. Because I see time to time Great Wall does not play how it used to play. And there are some other maps as well, where it seems to have that Cold War has dictated how the map should be played, which is basically going to one single spot and brawl, or just running counter or clockwise or counterclockwise. But I'm very, very excited about Live Oaks. It was one of the best maps that was yet not made its return, and it is coming back. In this season, we are also getting a World War II tech tree line, the Japanese tank destroyer. They released the premium will be coming out on Tuesday. They released the statistics. It's very similar to the PC. They didn't really nerf it much, but the reload was nerfed by a second. Everything else seems the same. And with our perks, I don't think 1 second of extra reload would have much impact. And I expect that the entire line to be either released 2 weeks from day 1 of the season or 4 weeks. They used to release after 2 weeks back in the day, but these days we see the line comes out after 4 weeks from the initial premium tank release. So I don't expect much nerfs on the tanks. They would be TDs, but they're not as broken TDs, I think. I haven't played them much. My opinion might change. But they're not, because they're big, don't have much camo. Usually the problem is when a tank has camo as well as alpha and penetration, like Tehran, AVRE, and other high alpha tank destroyers. Then Other changes that are coming with this season is there's the tank reforge. Most of the Tiger tanks will be, we don't know what the details are yet. We can expect they might be buffs. They listed a few tanks, only 2 of them are tier 10, Panzer 7 and FVs. Again, it could be rebalance, it could be nerf, it could be buff, but I'm leaning towards buff. We'll see what those changes are. The tier 8 will be earnable with the 2K pass as well. The tier 8 Japanese tank destroyer. We'll get that as stage 100. And then there's a Era 3 premium that will be part of Ultimate Season. Looking at the statistics, it looks like a mid-tier Era 3 tank, like the most Era 3 tank they released. And does not have, it has 6 days of gun depression and 550 alpha, so not the 700 alpha we've been seeing lately. More of an average alpha tank. Also, for the tier 8 tank destroyer, we will be able to earn the skin. I personally really like the skins, especially when I can earn them. That's what I like. Not paying for the skins. We can earn the skins for free for the tier 8 tank destroyer, and the skin for the Cold War tank will be available if you buy the Ultimate Season Pass. Both the tank and the skin will be part of the Ultimate Season Pass. So that's also a nice thing when you don't have to spend extra for the skin, especially for a tank that you got it on a huge discount or essentially for free, right? And that's what I do. I just wait for skins to be earnable, or at best I buy them when they are 50% off during various discounts. And that was what in terms of what tanks will be coming out. In addition to that, for Cold War, they are changing the third shell from heat to HE for some of the Era 3 tanks. There is a list. You can go to the site. You can see all those tanks that are being changed, or the shells that are being changed. They're also changing the ammo cost of some of the tanks because they felt they were too expensive after they did the Cold War economy, silver economy changes. So some of the tanks will have their shell costs reduced, so you can earn more silver. That mainly affect if you're not doing that much damage. Right? If you're doing a lot of damage on those tanks, I don't think the shell cost will make that much difference, because what's extra 10,000 spend on your shell? But if you're only making like 50,000 or maybe 100,000, then 10 or 20,000 saved in shell cost could be a lot. In addition to that, the season will include some garage decoration. Not much of a fan of garage, but I do see a lot of people that do enjoy to decorate their garage with the current theme. And as I said, the details about the tank that are being reforged or balanced will be available on Monday. And also next week we'll be able to do the videos on the newer tanks. So in this game we use the derp gun. Now moving on to our last tank, heavy tank number 6. This is available on level 25. As I said, last season we had Type 64, beautiful tank. I really enjoyed playing that tank a lot. And this time it's heavy tank number 6. This tank has, it's a Tiger. It plays exactly like a Tiger, and if you're a fan of Tiger, you'll probably love this tank. But it is more mobile compared to the other 2 tanks that are there, that are being sold or are available as part of the season. But I compared it with some other tanks. I compared it with the M6, and this tank does not feel as special at tier 6. I love the Tiger 1, the tier 7, beautiful tank. Tiger 2, the best tier 8 heavy. E75, very solid tank. Well, and then E100, not so much. So the reason I like Tiger 1 is because it has huge HP, the maximum HP for tier 7. But this tank has like your standard tier 6 heavy tank HP, so you don't have the luxury of out DPM someone just because you have more HP. Not to mention, you don't have the DPM, that much DPM to begin with. So M6 not only has close to 250 pen compared to heavy tank number 6, only 194 pen. M6 also has slightly higher DPM and 10 degrees of gun depression. And because you have high alpha, it has a 240 compared to 220, you have to expose less. So M6 is just a lot better than this tank. I would say this tank is maybe average. I haven't played many tier 6 heavies, but I wasn't impressed, especially when I compared it to M6. There seems to be a huge disadvantage if you're facing an M6, especially because you don't even have that good pen, right? Or alpha is not that high either, so you have to expose yourself pretty much. But if you are playing this tank similar to Tiger 1, just start with the sniping position. You don't have armor. I mean, I was bottom tier in this match, and I didn't play the best way. I peeked that heavy first, took a shot from him, and then I peeked Charity tier, and he penned me as well. And as you said, this tank is at tier 6, has the same armor as tier 7. So again, not the greatest armor to begin with, but you can still bounce shots from tier 5 and tier 7, and you can side skip more effectively when you are top tier, right? Because now that's the same tier 7 armor. Side armor you have at tier 6, so you can side scrape. The front is about 100, not that strong. If you're flat on, it'll get penned. If you're angled, they might bounce here and there. But you have better luck bouncing shots when you're side scraping compared to if you are trying to bounce with your hull or turret, because that will not happen. The tank is very similar to Citadel, Tiger 217, with very minor differences. So if you have those tanks, you know what to expect from this tank, as well as this tank is no different. But again, I do know how people are passionate about different versions of Tigers, and they would be excited to add them to their collection. It's not a new tank, it's been there, so most of you might have the tank, but I'm not sure if this tank was earnable in the past or not. I do have the tank, but I couldn't remember if it was from season or from a war chest. But I have a feeling we might expect some buff on this line, especially with the gun, especially considering if the Tiger line is getting buffed. Because the tanks in the outline that are getting buffed, as I said, the entire Tiger line, and then we'll also see VK Bravo, VK 100B as part of the list as well. It says tanks reforged, but I expect buff. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, as you can see in this game, whenever I try to use my armor, it doesn't work, even though it's a heavy tank, but your armor doesn't work. Not to mention I was bottom tier, so I shouldn't expect anything to bounce off me as well. In the idle scenario, I should have started off sniping and then used my HP early on later in this game to help my team. But when the game started, our light tank took the bull, and there was only one light tank from the enemy team as well, and I saw there was an opportunity for me to go and help our light tank. I was a little late, our light died, but I do end up killing that light, and I was in a decent position. Obviously didn't have the camo, but I had the bolt control, so it provided me flexibility to utilize my gun more effectively compared to if I was sniping in the back, like 1-2 line, I might not have enough shots. Did lose my HP early on, but once I was low HP, I try to not peek when I'm spotted. Not that difficult to do, but you know, the greed of doing more damage, I expose myself more than I should, especially when I'm spotted and end up losing HP. Sometimes not much of an issue if you have enough HP, but sometimes it is. So always play careful in the beginning. And that's also the case with the TS1 as well. Be passive in the beginning, and then you can utilize. In Orochi, if you are top tier, obviously you can be aggressive. Similar with the heavy tank number 6, if you are top tier, you can be somewhat aggressive, still a support tank, because it does not have that alpha, right? There are tanks that have more alpha than this tank. There are tanks with like 350 to 400 alpha. You have to keep in mind where you can trade. Also, there are tanks like D3488 that has huge DPM compared to this tank. So never underestimate, because even the tanks with low penetration can easily pen you with standard rounds. Even tier 5s will pen you. So peek wisely. So that was about this this video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. We'll have some tank reviews for the new tanks that are coming out later next week. Have a great rest of your day.